Hello and welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 92. My name's Annaschmidt and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. I know I keep saying that, but I just share things that no one else does. And today we are talking house healing and the not-so-glamorous side of energy work. And I'm going to give you 18 reasons why this type of work is not for the faint-hearted. Now, I get many emails from people interested in the glamorous side of working with paranormal beings. But they aren't interested in the day-to-day, 24/7 exhausting lifestyle that comes with this type of work when you're interacting with energy beings of all different levels. People often get all starry-eyed and think that they can make a few quick bucks, like this is going to be an easy job, like I'll just breeze through it, or I'll become famous from doing energy work. And I have to tell you, that is not how it works. The following 18 reasons that I'm sharing with you today, they may challenge some people's perspectives, as I quite often do. The information may come across a little bit blunt to some listeners, but I just say it how it is. I am Australian and we do tend to, a spade is a spade. And I just say it how I see it from a lifetime of dealing with the paranormal. And I'm always honest and open about it. And people need to know if they're considering this type of work as a career. They need to think of the pros and the cons of energy work. So let's get into it. Let's look at our 18 reasons. Number 1, dealing with the paranormal is not a party trick. It is not. It is absolutely not. Dark entities are real and they dislike being treated as a circus act. We don't know a lot about these beings and you have to tread really lightly and respectfully, especially if you're doing house healing work or any other type of energy job. For this episode today, I'm focusing mainly on house healing. But you can apply these 18 points that I'm going to mention really to doing any type of energy work. Because paranormal beings are part of our environment and you have to be aware of them when you step into the energy world. And there's no bragging rights when it comes to working with dark entities. Otherwise they will find a way to smack you down to size. And believe me, I've experienced this second hand. There was a man named Ken back in episode 8 who thought he would brag about his clearing that he did on a very famous haunted location in the US. Well, one thing, he didn't do a very good job of it. The beings were still there. And they didn't actually move on. They were actually more annoyed than they were before he went there. And they really do dislike people who brag. People who live in ego do not work well with the paranormal. So in episode 8, now just briefly, Ken emailed me to talk about a particular property in the US that he did some work on. Didn't tell me the address, didn't tell me the location, but the entities from that location made my life merry hell for about 2 weeks. And not just me, but a co-worker in the United Kingdom. Now, we knew this was a problem with Ken because neither of us had problems in our homes or in our sleep states until this email from Ken. So if you want to hear the full story about bragging Ken and his oversized ego, have a listen to episode 8. Now, number 2. You need to have a no-fear attitude when you're working with the paranormal. But this is not to be mixed up with being arrogant or egotistical. I'm very much no fear with working with these beings. I'm just neutral. They are energy, they are in our environment, we are in their environment. I work with them in a very neutral way. They respect me, I respect them, things usually go pretty well when I do the house clearing work. But there's always a few rebels, there's always those that don't like being moved out of homes or other locations. So you have to be prepared to deal with them. Now, demonic entities, oh my goodness, they can sniff out a beginning house healer a mile away. They know you're not a threat like the people who are more experienced. Well, people like me, I'm not a threat anyway, but these entities don't like being evicted from their homes. They can get a little bit upset, just like we people do when we have to move out of our homes suddenly. But they love sniffing out beginners, and they will play with beginner house healers. They will test them. They will use mental, emotional and physical tactics just to see what your triggers are. They will mess with your emotions. They will get into your dreams. But quite often people go into homes, they're half-cocked, they don't know what they're doing, they're stumbling around, they're causing more problems, stirring up the energy more than actually clearing it. They do have good intentions. I'm not giving beginners a hard time here today. I'm just saying what I've seen and what I've experienced. From a beginner, but also now to being more on the specialist level, as I call myself. Now, these entities will get very, very annoyed and they can follow you home and they will test you. They're sussing out what your triggers are. This is how they work. They have to get to know what triggers you because then they can use that against you. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. Now, number 3. This is kind of funny, but it's very, very true. You get a name on the dark paranormal grapevine. Now, what that is, the dark vine is like a demonic version of a gossip hotline, as we humans call it. These beings know who you are, they know where you live, and they can visit and observe you anytime they want. They're going to watch. They're going to look at your behaviours. They're going to look at your work ethic. And then they're going to decide whether you're someone that they can tolerate, like me, or someone who they need to show who is boss. Now, number 4, you will be challenged. Believe me, this work is not for the faint-hearted. It is not what you see on the TV. It is not what you see in paranormal investigations or people who talk about being demonologists. I mean, fair enough, they have their own way of doing things. I'm not doubting them. I'm not putting a downer on them. But I know from working with these entities, you have to be respectful. You have to understand how they work. They will challenge you from the very first moment that you put your foot in that door when you're doing a house clearing job. Now, this can be in person or it can be remotely. I work worldwide. I work on homes all over the world. And quite often these beings will come to me beforehand or they listen in. They listen in on the conversation that I have with my clients. So quite often we'll do a phone call or a Zoom call, like a consultation call before someone decides whether they want to employ your services. And they eavesdrop and they want to get to know who you are, how you work. And if you're already on the dark grapevine, they will know who you are. I don't have many problems with dark energy beings now because they know my work ethic. They know how I work and that I'm very, very respectful. And a few times I've had to be extremely humble, like back in episode 8. That was a rather interesting experience. Now, when you're doing this work, you will be challenged, but also to learn how to be a very creative thinker very fast. And especially someone who likes doing detective work. When you're doing this house clearing, when you're doing property cleansing or clearing or healing or whatever you want to call it, it's energy work. You have to be a very creative thinker. You've got to be very flexible, very adaptable, not getting stuck in the textbook type thinking. I've always been on the outside of everything, really. I don't follow rules very well. I don't follow other people's ways of doing things. I like to do things my own way, from my own learning, the ups, but also the downs. And I've found that when you do the very detailed detective work when you go into homes. Houses will talk to you. Depending on your level of psychic abilities, psychic openness, I quite often see what happens in rooms, especially when it comes to trauma imprints, which are negative actions that people do to each other or do to themselves. Those sort of activities leave an imprint in the home. And all that energy needs to be removed, along with the emotional imprints, the portals, the black magic, the detrimental earth energy lines, spirits, dark, demonic beings, elementals. There's all sorts of energy to look at when you're doing house clearing. Now, you can learn the basics with someone. You can do some training with someone that has years more experience than you. But what you do then is that you take that information, you add your own experiences, you add your own uniqueness to the work, and that's what makes it yours. Clearing homes and properties, buildings, the land, places where there's been mass trauma, there is always layers. And you can't go in and just do one quick swipe through, yep, there you go, pay me now. It doesn't work like that. You have to do the work, you have to check it, and then you have to check it again. And then I usually go back in a week later and I'll do one more check. And then I'll talk to the client. I'll get to know how the house feels, have the paranormal symptoms that were described originally. I ask what's changed, how the house feels, how the family is functioning, whether the children and the pets are happy. You've got to learn to be thorough. That's what I'm trying to say. I always say things the long way round. So 5, this type of energy work is not a job. It is a lifestyle. And people go, what do you mean when you say that? You do not clock on at 9 and then clock off at 5 o'clock. It just doesn't work that way. These entities and spirits, once they see you and you either see, feel, hear or know that they're there, they will come to you. Well, you need to share with them. You need to share with them your boundaries in a very respectful way. And it's like working with teenagers. You can lay out the boundaries, whether they're verbal or whether they're written down. You have to repeat them. You have to be consistent. You need to just stay calm, be relaxed, and just repeat the boundaries over and over and over again until these entities know that you mean business. Now, I work in a very respectful way with a very firm but kind manner. That's why I get on so well with them. That's why I'm still here at 56 and I can educate people how to work with these entities. They're not what you see in the movies. They're not what you read in the books. That is all paranormal drama and it's entertainment. And I get that. People want paranormal entertainment. But that doesn't transfer into working with these energies in reality. Now, I was saying about boundaries. You need to set boundaries because otherwise these beings just run rampant around your house. They'll be in and out of your bedrooms. They'll be messing with the electrics. They'll be turning your laptops and your phones and everything will be on and off. There'll be plumbing problems. They can cause all sorts of problems in homes and they will annoy you day and night. If they're spirits, they simply want help. They want to get your attention. If they're the darker entities, they're a little bit more tricky to work with. They love to trigger people. Now, it can be to see what your level of vulnerability is, what your fears are. It can also be to have a little bit of fun because they have a sense of humour and they know that we react to certain things like scratching, knocking, cold spots, hearing whispering, flickering lights and so forth. And they just do these things and they just sit back and have a giggle. Now, 6, entities trigger your worst traits. They know your hidden fears and how to trigger you. Now, you're sitting there thinking, how do they do that? I can't answer that. I feel like they can read our energy. They know, like I said earlier, about your work ethic, about your personality, about how egotistical you are. Keeping yourself energetically clean means dealing with your emotional baggage. Now, this is really important. We all have emotional baggage. We all have life traumas. We need to work through them, come to a place where we are We've either moved through them or we're comfortable with them, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a mental health professional, but I know from working with myself, I am pretty much about 70 to 80% emotionally clean, energetically clean, because I've done the self-work. I've done my shadow work. I know what my emotional triggers are. So when you don't create what you know triggers you, the entities are like, I'm just going to move on to the next person. They just won't bother with you because they can't get the reaction they want. Now, following on from number 6, in number 7, entities will test you. They're like your worst teacher. They're like your parents or your boss or whoever it is in your life that tests you, that challenges you. You need to become really mentally and emotionally tough. You need a thick skin. You need boundaries, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically. Because entities like to test your responses, your mental resilience. Now, at first, if you're a newbie, they might observe you. They might try a few of their tactics just to see where you're at and how vulnerable you are. Now, I've got a quick experience to share with you. One of my issues when it comes to emotional toughness is that I have a problem with human suffering. Now, I've mentioned this in previous episodes, so I'm not going to go on a lot about it, but you'll get the idea. I love paranormal movies, generally the paranormal psychological type movies. I can't watch paranormal horror because there's too much gore, there's too much blood spillage, there's just too much yuck. It just takes away from the story. So entities in the early days of me doing this work, when I was a newbie, I was what they call fresh meat. I know that sounds horrible, but I actually heard it in my head one day when I was working with a friend of mine who was a very, very new house healer. And I went, I'm going to have to remember that to use that later on. They want to know whether you're someone that they can trigger. So in my early days, I'd be going to bed, get to sleep, and these entities would come into my dreams and they would trigger me with the worst images. They were just horrible. And I would wake up sweating and I'd wake up and I'd be like, what on earth is going on? And what I did in those days, when I cottoned on to what they were up to, I would simply wake up, sit up in bed and very quietly say, so I didn't wake up anyone in the house, I would very quietly say, you don't frighten me. This is not real, it's not real, it's not real. Please leave my house now. And then I just simply lie down and go back to sleep. And I might get a few pushes, pokes and prods and I'm like, no, doesn't affect me. I know what you're doing. You don't frighten me. Please leave. And then they just throw their arms in the air and they just go because they're not getting the responses that they want. And then I'd realise, I've got that job I'm starting tomorrow. I know what they're up to. So this is the detective work. I observed and I went, okay, I don't normally have these horrible dreams. Where is it coming from? I know this house I'm going into has some rather sketchy history. So these entities obviously don't want to move out because they like the vibration that's in the building. So they're like, right, how can we trigger Anna to frighten her enough so she won't do the work? Well, I have to say, I have never been frightened off a job. Now, number 8, this one might challenge a few people. You have to look after your body and eat a clean diet. Now, just as much as in number 7, you're looking after your mental and emotional health, doing your shadow work, working through your life traumas, this work really knocks your physical body about. We are not designed to deal with energy work. We're not designed to be dealing constantly with paranormal beings in the energy world on a daily basis. Like I've had times after I've finished jobs and I can say that I have had many energetic hangovers from doing too much energy work. Like I tend to work 7 days a week now, but I have a routine. I work from 12 noon to about 6 p.m. And in the morning, I do emails and social media, working on my podcast. But I only do 6 hours of energy work a day. And I found that time frame between 12 and 6 works for me. but I can't do more than 6 hours because this work really knocks your body about. And I eat a very clean diet. I'm not a vegetarian, although I do like vegetarian food, but I eat meat, I eat vegetables. I don't smoke, I don't drink. And I'm not saying that smoking or drinking is going to affect, but you have to do it moderately, if I can put it that way. Because your body needs a clean, healthy diet. It needs lots of water because this work really does knock your body about. And the other thing too that just came to mind, I find that this type of energy work, it makes me hyperactive. I'm working with the archangels, I'm working with the dark entities, working with the spirits, sometimes the elementals. And I find that if I finish work by 6 p.m, have my dinner, I've got about 3 hours for my energy to settle, to sort of level out again. So I can go to bed about 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'm relaxed, and I can go to sleep without any issues. So when you do this energy work, you have to observe your body and know what you can eat, when you start work, when you stop work, what affects you. Now, number 9, we're talking about you have to work with energetic protection. Now, I didn't for a long time. I just figured just deal with whatever comes my way. And that is when my physical body didn't cope. I'm dealing with a house that's got 10 or 12 demonic beings in it. And I'm getting whacked with their energy. They're coming to me and then I have to clear them. And it was just too much. So I had to sit down and work on a really solid energetic protection practice. Now, sometimes these entities, when you're not protected and you're psychically open, these entities can sneak in when you're connected to a person or a property during the clearing job, and they're simply looking for a new host. They're pretty much sussing out what sort of food source is around. And what I mean by that is they're looking at the types of emotional imprints you have present, the types of trauma imprints you have present, which is basically your traumatic life experiences. Your addictions. A lot of these entities love addictions, and people get really annoyed when I talk about alcohol and recreational substances. When you partake in those two activities, and I mean to excess, you're lowering your vibration. These energy beings are low vibrational beings. So I'm not saying don't have a drink. If you want to have a drink, moderate yourself. Because these entities, they can slip in when you least expect it. And sometimes you don't know they're there, but all of a sudden your sleep changes, your behaviours change. You can't sleep, you can't relax, you're heightened. You're depressed all of a sudden and you don't know why. You're having arguments with your partner. Your dog won't come near you. The kids look at you and I don't know what's wrong with you, Dad, but there's something different. Something's changed. All of these experiences can, of course, be medical or mental health issues. But if they're not those two things, you've been checked out by your doctors, it's most likely energetic. Now, number 10. This is interesting. I've only dealt with this within the last 3 years. When you get into doing energy work, you attract all sorts of different people. And they all have their own practices that they do. If you find that you're dealing with magic energy and magic entities, yes, this is real. Now, I didn't believe in all this. It's just that I'd had no experience with it. Well, now I have. I've had 3 years of observing magical practices. When you're dealing with magic or sorcery or other types of elemental energy, you need different strategies to manage your protection and also for working on people and properties. And you need to regularly update your protection and work practices because you need to make sure that you're safe. Now, I don't know a lot about magic. It's not my speciality, but I know I've had to deal with it. And I had to, I'll call it up level. I had to up level my protection skills, my observation skills, how I went about my work. It was just really interesting. It was really quite fascinating. Number 11, people are going to spread lies and rumours and gossip about you. It is a fact. It happens. I've seen it happen and I've had it happen to me. You may get all sorts of negativity thrust upon you. Now, this can be from friends, from family, from workmates, especially if you've got a second job. I used to have 2 jobs where I worked at a local primary school, and on the weekends I would go and do palmistry readings in a local hippie shop. And of course, some of the children from the school went to this particular shopping centre, and their parents, and they would see my banner out the front of the shop, and then the kids would come up to me in the school and go, "So what were you doing at that shop?" Now, being a teacher assistant, like I've said before in other episodes, I wasn't allowed to talk about what I do outside school, and I mean, that's fine. All I would do is that I would say to the students, some adults have a second job. And then they'd try and press me for more answers, and I'd go, no, that is simply all I'm saying. But you're going to love this little story that I've got to share with you. I have some friends who regularly attend a spiritual church here in Tasmania. You know how people love to gossip, and it gets all drama-y, and you know what I mean. They love the drama. They love the talking about other people. It's just something that we humans do. Now, my friends got quite upset when they were attending this church one night. They were there for a reading. They were there to learn to do flower readings, there to learn to do channeling and mediumship. Now, they walked in the door and they're standing around waiting for everything to start. And one of them has very good hearing. And he heard some people gossiping about me and my work, which I always find quite interesting. Now, these people called me the Witcher, which at that time, when they were using that phrase, equated what I do to a TV show of the same name, about a man going around slaying demons. Now, these people, they had no idea about what it's like to work with the dark paranormal beings. I'm sure that they think that it's some sort of devil worship or satanic practice. And I can assure you absolutely 100% it is not. I'm very ethical, very strong work practices. I work with the angels and the archangels, and I work with the dark beings. I have a level of respect for all energy beings. And I have to say, they get challenged. These people, they get very, very challenged when it comes to the paranormal. They, quite often, a lot of them will do the love and light thing, which really does make me want to vomit. And I'm just saying it does. As much as there's archangels, angels, spirit guides, elementals, there's also the dark energy beings. They're the other end of the scale. They are the balance. The dark realm is the balance to the light realm, to the angelic realm. Now, I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but just be aware, when you start this type of very alternative, very niche energy work, sometimes people will gossip, but you have to learn to have a tough skin and just not let it affect you. Now, number 12, understanding demon protocol and what annoys them. This is really, really important. This is a biggie. When you understand how they work, as much as we humans possibly can, you need to be very humble, very professional, very respectful. You have to know when to back away, when to stand your ground, and how to talk to these entities. Now, I talk to them just like I'm talking to you now, just like I'm talking to a friend or a family member or a loved one or someone who's really keen to understand the paranormal, and we're just having a 3-hour conversation, as I do sometimes, which is quite lovely because they're just interested and they find that my perspective takes away all the fear, all the drama that you see with the movies and how we've been trained to think about the paranormal. Now, these entities, they occupy people because they can be in your energy field, and they also occupy places for reasons. They're never just hanging around. They're never just loitering in a place. This is where the observation and the detective work comes in. When I get ready to go into a home or a building or a property or even a piece of land to do an energetic clearing, I always say out loud, because I find that The words carry a vibration, they carry a tone, they carry an energy that you can't do with your mind when you sort of say or project energy with your mind. So I tend to talk a lot to energy beings that no one else can see. So when I'm looking at the picture of a home, I say the address, I ask permission of the land guardians, and I would like to let any paranormal beings, spirits, dark or demonic level beings, I want to let them know that they won't be harmed in any way, they are treated respectfully, and they simply need to leave the location. And when you set that level of expectation, they go from being tense and getting ready for a battle, they just relax. They just relax. I feel the change in the energy of properties when I talk to the paranormal beings because they understand how I work. And when they do that, they're less likely to be reactive. Now, number 13, there's no such thing as being a part-time paranormal worker or a part-time demon hunter or a part-time demon slayer. I really do dislike those last two terms. People use them all the time. But like I said before, you've got to be humble and respectful. And saying you're a part-time demon hunter or a part-time demon slayer, you're just putting the challenge out there. Never, ever, ever use that term. When you see these beings and you start doing this work, like I said, you've got to have boundaries. They see you, you feel, know that they're around, and the door is open energetically. It's not a 9-to-5 job. And it can sometimes roll into weekends, and it can sometimes roll into when you go out with your mates, or you go to the pub, or you go, say, on a paranormal investigation, or you're in an old building, or you're in a location. All of a sudden, you feel like you're surrounded by something that you can't see because they know you do the work. I think people who do energy work or particularly paranormal work or house healing, maybe our vibration, our aura, maybe our aura shines a certain way. Maybe it has certain colours. But these beings know what you do and they can quite often feel challenged. Now, back in episode 5, back in the early days of this podcast, I shared a local Tasmanian experience with a lady who called herself a demon hunter. Now, she wanted to go part-time. She only wanted to work Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm like, okay, we'll see what we can do. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. That was the episode that I met the Legion General for the very first time. Slightly traumatic, but slightly fascinating. But anyway, this lady... But these entities, they know what you do. They know where you live. And if you're disrespectful like this lady, they will torment you day and night. And this is what she experienced. She had these beings tormenting her in bed, getting into bed, on the bed, under the bed, around the bed, pulling the sheets, flickering the lights. They were in her kitchen, in her lounge room, in her bathroom. They were everywhere. They followed her. You call yourself a demon slayer, you're putting a target on your head. And you've got to remember, there are millions, probably billions of these entities. I haven't been to the dark realm, so I can't really tell you how many. But I imagine got a lot of friends. You upset one of them, you are more than likely upsetting 5, 10, 20, 50, 100. And the more there are around you, the worse your body is going to react. Now this lady, she was complex. They would go on demon slaying adventures, her and a family. No wonder they all had problems, but we won't get into that. These entities loathe demon slaying, demon hunting terminology, and they will pull you up on it. They can and will follow you home, and they will affect the energy of your home, the behaviours of your family, your pets, the energy of the home, your bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, the whole thing. Remember, there are millions of them, and they all have buddies. Now, number 14, you have to keep your head on straight and ditch your ego. And we have talked about this earlier, but I just want to remind people, this work is not about you. It's not about how good you are, about how famous you want to be, how much, how many likes you want to have on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or wherever. It's about helping clients to improve the energy of their homes, help their families, help their kids sleep better, help their pets, help their relationships, improve the energy of the structure of the home, and of the land. It's not about you. Dark entities can pick egotistical people a mile away, and they will make you pay for it. I have seen it all too often. You can quite often, if you're not already, you can turn into a paranormal addict, which ramps up the level of connection that you have to this work. Meaning that you think paranormal, you sleep paranormal, you eat paranormal. It's all you think about. It's all you watch on the TV. It's all you write about. Your podcast is about it. You have a YouTube channel about it. You have a Facebook page about it. Got my hand up here. But it's what I do. It's what I love. I wear the consequences. Now, one of the things I haven't written on my list, which I might include here now, is that you may have difficulties when you enter certain locations. I find sometimes these beings feel so threatened, even if I'm just going to visit a friend. I've walked into a lady's house one day I haven't seen for a very, very long time. Never been to her house actually before. I knew her through my schoolwork. We used to talk sort of in the classrooms or in the hallway. We'd have a chat. And she's like, "Oh, you should come over for a cup of tea one day." Well, I did that indeed. And I walked in her front door. And as soon as I walked in, I got this very sharp poke in my throat, like in the centre of my throat, between those two bones where you've got that dip. Something poked me really hard. And you know why? Because they felt threatened. Even though I was simply out for an afternoon to have a chat and a cup of tea and a bicky and just have a laugh, these entities, it was probably more than one, poked me in the throat so hard I started coughing and coughing and coughing and coughing, and it was the most embarrassing coughing fit that I have ever had. Now, coughing seems to be, if it's not medical, seems to be a paranormal sign. It's the way our body responds to paranormal entities. Because I've had a lot of people tell me that all of a sudden they have these strange coughing fits when they've gone on paranormal investigations or they've gone on a trip to a local haunted site to do a ghost tour, and they get these random coughs. These coughs last for a good 5 to 10 minutes sometimes, and you think you're going to die sometimes. It's so bad, depending on the types of entities that are around. I just observe it now. It's one of the symptoms I put in my book called The Darkness Around Us. And yes, I did write a book. I would not have thought of myself as an author, but the universe said to me, you need to write down what you know to help other people understand what the signs and symptoms are, how these beings work, what they're up to, why they're here. So if you're interested, you'll find a link in the description box about my book called The Darkness Around Us. Now we're getting near the end of our list. Number 15, you must learn how to read people and their needs and their intentions. And I don't mean psychic reading. You're not going to sit down and do a tarot card reading for them. But you're going to assess and analyse their emails they send to you, the types of information they share, how it's written, the language they use, whether they're talking to you in person and whether they're talking about their supposed paranormal issues. It can also be their body language if you see someone in person, or their voice and the way that they speak, their tone, and the amounts of nervous ums and ahs that they go about when they're talking to you on the phone. I've had some rather interesting experiences over the years with people who really have mental health issues. And I'll quite often say to people that if I think it's a mental health issue, I actually won't do an energetic clearing for them until they have been to see a mental health professional. Because I can sense when it's not a paranormal issue. It is someone that is maybe lonely or they're looking for attention, and they know that talking to healers or paranormal workers is going to get them attention. There are people out there that go from healer to healer to healer, paranormal worker to house healer. I've experienced it. So you have to learn to be very discerning about what is a genuine client and someone that really needs mental health care. Now, number 16, dealing with skeptics. You need to develop a really thick skin. There is no room for blubbering or being a drama queen or a drama king in this work. Skeptics will doubt you, and they will let you know openly that they think you're a fake or a fraud or that you're just taking people's money. Now, it's how you handle these types of people that is important. I will let skeptics have their rant, And if they're still on the phone or they're still standing in front of me right up in my face, I will acknowledge them. Like, yep, I can understand that you're skeptical about energy work. It is hard to prove it scientifically. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. People can be skeptical for many, many reasons. It could be that they're fearful of the unknown because of religious upbringing, religious beliefs, or they're just left-brain thinkers. They could be very scientifically minded. You know, that's 100% okay. Some people don't want to know about the paranormal. Some people aren't ready for it. Some just don't believe in it. And that's 100% okay too. I've worked for skeptics over the years who have noticed massive shifts in their home's energy and their family interactions and pet behaviours, children behaviours, the feeling of the home, the changes in the way the electricity is working in the home. But they won't acknowledge that energy work has helped. And that's okay too, because remember, ego is not part of this work. It's not about you. Because what you've done is you have helped them. That's the number one point. The number 2 point is that you've planted the seed, that there are other perspectives out there. And that's really important to remember. Now, number 17. This is a rather interesting one. You can end up with lots of fake people around you, people that think they're your friends, the fake friends that we all seem to have. Some of these people try and put you on a pedestal, but you have to remember to keep your ego in check. You are a professional. You are a professional energy worker who is serving the public. So you just keep it real. The more people you know doesn't mean that they're real friends. A lot of them are egotistical friends, or they just want to be friends with you because you work in the paranormal. Had a few of those over the years. Now lastly, number 18. We finally got to the end of the list. Be honest. If you can't do a job, then say so to the client. And what you do is you pass them on to another energy worker if you know someone who specialises in that client's needs. Being a fake and taking people's money and this giving them fake results is all about greed, ego and pride. And you may get a really bad reputation. Now, like I said earlier, I won't always take a job. If I think it's a mental health issue, I will very kindly suggest that that person sees their doctor, sees their mental health professional, and then in 6 months' time, if they feel they still need an energetic clearing, that the mental health care isn't quite taking care of what they need, feel free to come back. Now, I've even referred people on to those that work in the areas of sorcery and magic, because it's not my speciality. I mainly work with what I call your freelancing, dark demonic beings, working with the spirits, working with the energy in homes. Magic and sorcery is a speciality. Now, before we finish up today, I wanted to look at 2 really important pros that go with this type of energy work. Number 1, it's really, really rewarding to help people live safer, happier lives in their homes. The emails and the phone calls that I get sometimes saying, oh, look, after 3 years, little Freddie is finally sleeping. He's staying in his bed. He's not wetting his bed. He's sleeping through the night. No more screaming and crying and being scared of the dark. Those sorts of emails just make my heart sing. When I can help people live happier, safer, that is what this job is all about. And number 2, if you choose to, like me, you can educate the public about this very unknown topic, and you can do it in a real way. Don't share other people's paranormal experiences. Don't share the experiences about sites and places that a lot of people talk about. That's okay. Share your experiences. People want to know the everyday paranormal experiences that people have, the everyday experiences that they can relate to and go, oh my goodness, I think she can help me because she's been through that and look how she fixed that problem. Educating people about real experiences from your perspective is so, so important. So if you choose to do that, start a YouTube channel, start a podcast, get on Facebook and do live videos, get on Instagram and do live videos. People love to see you. Before I had a podcast, people would get on YouTube and go, I like you. I like how you're every day. You're just like the woman that lives next door. You're a bit like me mum. You feel real, authentic and genuine. And then I have the phone conversation with people and they get to know you on another level. People can feel your passion for what you do and they can feel your authenticity through talking to you in person at a market or at an event. It's about putting yourself out there and letting people see you. All right, so I'm going to leave you with that today. I'll get off my soapbox now. So in episode 93, we are putting up the shields on paranormal protection. We're going to talk about the do's and the don'ts, and I will share practical advice and techniques that I use for protection from dark entities and a few of my experiences that are connected to not being protected and the difference I've noticed after I developed a good practical protection technique. So stay tuned and I look forward to being here with you again next week. So thank you for joining me today, and don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. You can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.